I mention in the description for this sketch I did a statistics course in the psychology department at UC Berkeley by this professor called Sheldon Zedek, which is an awesome name.
Cool name.
Yeah. And one of the things that he said, which I put in this article, which I really stuck with me, which was spend time with your data. And because that's when you notice that things are outliers. You haven't just sort of summed it up and said, okay, I've got all my data, I put it in the spreadsheet, I pressed the analysis, and this was the result. Is actually, you might have missed a ton of stuff unless you spent time with it. And the other thing that he really cemented in me was this, what he called planned comparisons. Because there's a great XKCD cartoon about it. There's a really interesting thing when you're doing an experiment, is that if you collect a lot of data and you look at it and you go, okay, well, I've got all of these people, I've got all these facets of the people, I've got all the things that they did in the experiment, and I've got all the outcomes. And if you look at enough combinations of things, there's a very good chance that some of these will correlate quite strongly. Yeah. And you'll be able to go, oh, well, as long as you're male and over 40, if you do this and eat greens, then you're going to live longer, right? But that's because you looked at 50 combinations. And it's like every time you look at a new combination for a new correlation, you have to put your threshold higher.
Your threshold for what? Your
threshold for whether or not it's chance. Sorry.
Sure. Okay. Yeah.
So like it could just be random in this particular sample. But what you need to do is you need to say, before you do your experiment, this is what I think is going to happen. And when I get the result, I'm going to look at this combination, because every time you come in and look at the combination, you've got just essentially some dice rolling.
A little bit. On. Yeah.
And if you look at enough of them, you might find something. The XKCD cartoon is, he's like, I think it's to do with jelly beans, and it's, do jelly beans, reduce your blood pressure or something like that. And he's like, red jelly beans don't reduce your blood pressure. Green jelly beans don't reduce blood pressure. And eventually he finds one of them, which had some random chance correlation that helps you out. And so it's a really strange facet of data that the more times you look at it, you have to take that into account. So when you talk about the hypotheses thing, that was one of the things that I remember Sheldon Zedek taught me as well. Planned comparisons, should you be doing some analyses of your own.
So, because isn't there a kind of phrase for statistics in that correlation does not imply causation?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the old,
how you set up.
That's the old shock attacks and ice cream sales.
There you go. Okay. Yeah.
So there's a massive correlation between ice cream sales and shock attacks in most countries, obviously, because shock attacks happen in the summer when people are eating ice cream.
Yeah. There's a fantastic...
Obviously, sorry, when I say most countries, I exclude the UK. We don't get a lot of shock attacks, luckily.
Yeah, I can't remember the last one.
No.
There was a fantastic graph I saw in preparing for this... There's a fantastic graph I saw preparing for this chat tonight that pits the age of Miss America over a 10-year period against the number of annual murders in the US by steam, hot liquids and hot vapours. And the two lines follow each other on this graph over this 10-year period almost perfectly.
Wow.
So you're thinking, wow, look at those. The age of Miss America and the number of annual murders by steam, hot liquids and hot vapours. Obviously, there is no causation between these two. There is no correlation of these two items.
I wonder how long it took the researchers to find two that match. It must have just been there for days.
I don't know where you found that, but there's a site which collects those.
Amazing.
Oh, is it really? This was on a blog.
Oh yeah, no, it's brilliant. It's got all sorts of just ridiculous things that correlate with each other, but obviously have nothing to do with each other.
Oh, that's fantastic! I wonder if I can find that and include that link for that website.
Yeah, I forget the name at the moment, but it's a brilliant collection.
That's good. I've looked it up, and that website is called Spurious Correlations, and it's well worth a look. I'll include a link in the description down below. Right, back to you guys.
Should you wish, you could have a search on the Sketchmanation site for ways that you can lie with charts and graphs, and because there was some really nice book and work by Edward Tufte about the visual display of quantitative information, and he goes to town on examples like those and chart junk where people have embellished charts with all sorts of random things. There's some examples in this book of that sort of thing as well. There's the one that I see perhaps the most, which really bugs me, is a bit like that. They do something where, for example, you take the price of oil and you make it, you use a column chart, but instead of a column you do a barrel, right?
Yep.
Because it's a oil, so you say it's $46 per barrel, let's say, and then you say it's $56 per barrel, and you just scale up the barrel up to a height of 56. And of course what you did there is the heights are the change in the price of oil, but a barrel which is up that big is now holding like 50 times as much oil as the previous one.
Because its height and its width and its depth all increase to that same amount.
Exactly, so you've massively accelerated things. So things like that where you use volume instead of area to compare things and stuff. And like that example where you haven't put the 0 on the chart, you've started it halfway. So if you want something to, I mean, if you want something to look like a big change,
a big
you just
jump,
start at 200, and you say go between 200 and 210, and then it's like a really exciting graph. Otherwise, it looks completely stable. Another one I found is if you're putting a chart on a PowerPoint slide or Google slide, let's say, and you want it to look like it's going up more, just make the chart narrower, and then it goes up more in a shorter space.
Yes.
Whereas if you So if your chart if it's not going up steep enough, because that's probably because you put your chart really wide on the page. You just print it really narrow. And
that's good. That's good. I've got a board meeting with Lord Sugar in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, you try that.
I'll make sure.
Can I give you another trick, Tommy? Another trick for sales.
Yeah.
Cumulative sales.
Oh, yeah. Cumulative sales is excellent.
And it's always on the way up.
Yeah, exactly. And don't take any negatives out. Like that nursing example, I imagine they did not include the number of nurses that left during
I'm sure
7
not.
years.
Yeah,
It's only the recruitment, not the actual total number of nurses doing that. That's a pretty clever one as well. Sorry, John, go on.
Well, I was going to say, when I called it sneaky averages, I was thinking I didn't really mean that people are usually sneaky.
Little snipe.
Averages often hide something, and they are a little bit sneaky.
Yes.
But I feel like we veered into the people that are sneaky.
We have. So I was going to.
Have we reached that cynical age? Is that the reality?
No, and I'm glad you clarify this, John, and I'm glad you clarify, because this does happen quite often in this podcast where your sketch has a very clear intention of what it's trying to communicate.
And Rob finds the darker side of it.
Yeah, we absolutely hijack it and take it on a journey that it doesn't deserve to go on. All music on this podcast series is sourced from the very talented Frank Cinelli. And you can find loads more tracks at frankcinelli.com.